האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dobra Vietcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Ki Tavo. We're going to be doing Os Ches, section number 8. Before we begin, let's take a look at a pasuk from the Parsha. This is Perek Chaf Ches, pasuk Yud Beis. What's happening here, this pasuk is part of the list of blessings of brachos that Hashem will bestow upon the Jewish people if they listen to his mitzvos. Unfortunately, very sadly, after this section of brachos, of course, in the parsha there is a section of tochacha, of admonitions and warnings about what will happen, all the terrible calamities that will befall the Jewish people, God forbid, if they do not follow Hashem's commandments. But in the section of brachos, the Torah says, "Yiftach Hashem lecha," Hashem will open for you. Es otsoro hatov, his good storehouse. Es hashamayim, the heavens. Loseis mitar artzecha beito, to give the rain for the land in its time. Ulevarech es kol maaseh yadecha, and to bless all of the work of your hands. V'hilvisa goyim rabim, and you will be in a position to lend money to many nations. Ve'ata lo silveh, and you will not have to borrow money. So all of the people will be well off financially, and the nation as a whole will be in a position to use its economic prosperity to make loans and to other nations, but the Jewish people will not have to borrow money from other nations because of the blessings of Hashem and the financial prosperity that the people will be blessed with. So that's the pasuk. So the Zera Shimshon begins with that pasuk. Os ches Parsha Ki Tavo, Yiftach Hashem lecha es otsoro hatov. Hashem will open for you. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that our shiur tonight is in honor of Avichai Ruvain Meir ben Shoshana Malka. So again, to start, Yiftach Hashem lecha es otsoro hatov. Hashem will open for you his good storehouse, es hashamayim, the heavens, loseis matar artzecha beito, to give the rain of the land in its time, ulevarech es kol maaseh yadecha, and to bless all of the work of your hands. That's the pasuk, of course, right from our parsha that we just read a moment ago. Ve'amru zal, and Chazal said, b'medrash u'b'gemara, in a medrash and in a gemara, my ulevarech. What is the pasuk referring to when it says, and Hashem will give a bracha to the work of your hands? Meaning, the first part of the pasuk was talking about rain, Hashem opening up the heavens, and rain will come down in its proper time and will bring wonderful crops and prosperity. And then it says, and Hashem will bless the work of your hands. So the Gemara answers, She'afilu pruta shebakis mispareches bo. Even the coins that one has in one's pocket will be blessed through the rain. So the rain's going to come, and that'll be a wonderful bracha, and somehow that will also bring a bracha to the coins, to the money that one has. So the Zera Shimshon says, that's the Gemara in the Medrash. So the Zera Shimshon says, kosher. There's a problem here. Ma kesher ve'inyan mitar artzecha. What is the connection and the common denominator between the rain for your land, im pruta shebakis, with the coins in your pocket? Right? These seem to be two very different things, because when the rain comes and causes crops to grow and to flourish, then obviously the people who are farmers and farming the land will have the prosperity of an overabundance of crops. But people who work and do other kinds of work, all of the people who do non-farming type activities, how will their work be blessed because of the abundant rainfall? That's the question that is asked on this Gemara and on this pasuk. Im kimo shepirshu hamifarshim. If you explain, if you answer this question according to the way that some commentators do, she'im yitain motar bi'ito, that if Hashem gives the rain, an abundance of rain in the proper time, tihiyeh hatvua bezo, that means that the produce will be inexpensive, right? If there's plenty of rain, that's going to mean plenty of produce is going to grow. So the price of the produce, whatever you want to buy, will go down because there's going to be so much wheat and so much barley and so many dates and olives and figs and pomegranates and everything else. There's going to be so much of it in such an abundance that the prices will be cheap. Ubazeh, and through this, tavi habracha al hapruta shebakis. This will bring a bracha to the money that people have because their money will go much farther, right? It makes sense to say that if the rain comes in abundance and that makes the crops grow in abundance, then the prices of all of the produce will go down. And so a person who earns money, even if that person's earning the same money this year as he earned last year, that money is going to go much farther. The person can buy a lot more produce with the money because the price of all the different commodities is going to be lower. So the Zera Shimshon says some commentators give that answer, but if you give that answer kosher, that's going to create another problem. Delishto kro mine. Because really the pasuk should have been quiet with this part about the bracha that Hashem's going to give. Shenira ke'ilu heim shtei brachos, because the pasuk makes it seem as if there are two different blessings, ve'ena ela achas, and it's really only one bracha. So let's pause here to understand what the Zera Shimshon is saying. The Zera Shimshon is not satisfied clearly with the answer given to suggested to the question that the Meforshim asked on the Gemara. So when we think back to the pasuk did seem to indicate that two different things were going on. There, Hashem would be opening up the heavens to bring down rain in the proper time, so there would be an abundance of rain. In addition to that, ulevarech has called maseh yadecha. Hashem would also be blessing the work that people do and the way they make a living. Hashem would be bringing a bracha to that. Seemed like a separate thing, seemed like two different brachos. However, according to the answer that some of the commentators gave, that the rain will make the prices of the produce go down, and therefore people's money will buy a lot more and will go farther. So the Zera will go further. The Zera Shimshon says, that's really one bracha. The bracha is the rain is coming and it's making a lot more produce, and therefore the prices go down, and therefore a person can buy more. That's not two separate brachos. So the Zera Shimshon says, according to that explanation, it really doesn't make sense that the Torah would talk as if there was a second bracha about blessing people's labor and their work and helping them in a separate way or in an additional way to the rainfall. So that's the Zera Shimshon's question, which of course means he's prepared to explain the pasuk in a different way, and which we will see that there are two different things happening. There's the rain, and then there's something else happening in addition to the rain that has to do with people's labor and the money that they make from their labor. And to see that, we have to move to the next paragraph, top of the next column. V'yuvan shapir b'mai de omrinan b'basra perek hey. This can all be understood easily, nicely, based on what a Chazal say in a Gemara in Baba Basra in the 5th chapter over there. So before we begin quoting the Gemara, the Zera Shimshon assumes that we know what the Gemara is talking about. So let's just fill in a little bit of information. The Gemara over there is dealing with many topics, but one of the topics it's dealing with is when a person is allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael because of a famine. It's perhaps not well known that if a person lives in Eretz Yisrael, they can't just leave and move to another country without having pressing or halachically acceptable reasons to do so. If a person lives in Eretz Yisrael and then they need to stay there unless there are significant reasons that they need to leave. So the Gemara says, if there's a famine, then a person can leave. And so the Gemara discusses what's the definition, so to speak, of a famine. And one point that the Gemara makes is that if the prices for food double, then a person can leave. If food is so scarce that the price doubles, let's imagine you used to be able to go in and buy a loaf of bread for shekel, and now you go in to get that same loaf of bread and it's 2 shekalim, so the price has doubled. That's a significant enough issue that a person could justify leaving Eretz Yisrael because of that situation. Obviously, hopefully with the intention to return when the famine subsides. So the Gemara has already talked about that when the following statement comes in. Omar Rabba ba Barchana, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba, the son of Barchana, quoted Rabbi Yochanan as saying, Lo shanu ela ma'os bizol ufeiros biyoker. That idea that you can't leave Eretz Yisrael because of a famine unless the price is double was not taught. Lo shanu, that was not taught. Ela ma'os bizol, unless money is cheap, meaning that money is plentiful. There's lots of money around. Upeiros biyoker, but the fruit, the produce, is what's expensive. So in a situation in which people have relatively easy access to money, you can work, you can get coins, you can get money. There's no shortage of money, but there is a situation with the produce that makes its prices go up. That's where the statement was made that prices would have to double in order to allow a person to leave because of the food problem, because of the famine or the threat of a famine. Aval, however, ma'os biyoker, if coins are very expensive, meaning coins are hard to come by, there's a shortage of money, of currency and money in the economy, if that's what's going on, then afilu amdu arbo'a sa'in besela, then even if the price of 4 sa'a, which is a measurement, 4 sa'a of grain, if the price of 4 sa'a of grain, a sa'a is depending on how you calculate it, and depending on who you ask, if you want to translate it to a American farming term, is about a peck. A peck, like a bushel in a peck is about 1/4 of a bushel. So let's call a saw 1/4 of a bushel. So arbo'a sa'in, 4 of these measurements, which would equal about a bushel, besela, costs a sela. That is a normal price. In the time of the Gemara, that was a normal price for grain to go for wheat to go for, was about a bushel for 1 sela. And so if the prices are normal, even if the prices are normal and they're not inflated at all, yotzin meha'aretz l'chutz la'aretz, a person can leave Eretz Yisrael to go to a place outside of Eretz Yisrael because money is scarce. Even though the prices are normal and the food supply seems to be fine, nonetheless, if it's hard to get coins and it's hard to get money, then a person can leave because that's another type of reason or cause for a famine. Sometimes the prices of the food can go up and become so expensive that people can't afford food, or the prices can be stable and be fine and be relatively inexpensive, but nonetheless, people don't have access to money. Maybe the jobs are scarce, or they're not getting paid as much. For whatever reason, money is scarce, and that's another reason you can leave. Ad Kahn, until here is a quote from the Gemara, from the 5th parak of Baba Basra. Ve'im kain, if so, if that's a fact, if that if the Zera Shimshon says, well, if the source that he just brought us, if that's a fact, and it is, afim HaKadosh Baruch Hu hoyunosein hamotar beito, that means that even if Hashem brings the rain in its time, there's an abundance of rain in the right time, ve'hatevua tiyeh bizol, and produce will be inexpensive. It will be at low prices. Zo'ena bracha gemura. That is not a complete bracha. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to be doing well and eating well and having plenty of food. Doesn't necessarily mean that. So all the rain that can be brought, even in the right time and even in plentiful amounts, doesn't necessarily mean everybody has plenty to eat. Because it's possible that people won't have coins. Coins will be hard to come by. Money will be hard to come by. And therefore, people will not be able to buy the food that they need, even though it's inexpensively priced. And here comes an example of that. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, from that same Gemara, we quote Rabbi Yochanan. Nihirna, I recall, kad havo kayomin arbo'o soyin besela. I recall a time Rabbi Yochanan said when 4 saw of wheat or of grain was priced at 1 sela, and we pointed out above that that's a normal price. That's a good price for people, a regular price for people. So there was no problem with the cost of buying grain. So to other produce, vahavo nefishi nefiche kafon bitiveria. And there were many people who were swollen with hunger. Their bellies were distended and swollen in the city of Tiberia because of hunger, even though the produce was plentiful, or certainly there was a regular supply of produce and the prices hadn't gone up. Nonetheless, people were hungry, were going hungry, mideles isar, because they didn't have even an isar. An isar is a small coin. People couldn't afford to buy food, not because the prices went up, but because they had no money. And when they had no money, they went hungry to the point of having signs of malnourishment, of malnutrition. Umishum hachi, and because of this, ka'amar, that's what the pasuk is saying. Ulevorech es kol ma'aseh yadecha. Hashem is going to bring the rain, and he's also going to bring a separate bracha, blessing people's labor and their work. Hainu hapruta shebakis. That's what the Gemara meant. That bracha refers to the money that people have in their pockets. Shahamoos yiyu bizol. Money will be inexpensive. Money will be plentiful. People will have plenty of money, which is a different bracha, an additional bracha to the bracha of rainfall. So the Zera Shimshon, as he often does, has taken a pasuk which is easy to read at face value, and then through questioning and analyzing that pasuk helps us attain a much deeper and better, more accurate understanding of the pasuk, because now we can go back and say, aha, there are in fact 2 brachos being mentioned in this pasuk. It's not just one bracha that has to do with rainfall. It's the bracha of rainfall. In addition, it's the bracha of there being labor, being work for people, and people being able to make money and be paid with coins. So there's plenty of money and currency and coins in the economy, so that people can afford to buy the food, which is going to be at good prices because of the plentiful rainfall. So there's a double bracha there that the Zera Shimshon has explained to us. Speaking of double brachos, as we're in the month of Elul and getting closer to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, may Hashem bless us to have a good Geben Shiur, a beautiful and wonderful Rosh Hashanah and meaningful Yom Kippur, and a beautiful Sukkot following that, God willing. So all of us should receive brachos and double brachos and multiple unlimited brachos. Yashar koach to everyone for joining.